Hello everybody, Jason of New Age Revolution Cave with the dogs. Dog number 1, dog number 2, attention seeker. She's over here, don't worry. It's, what is it, Wednesday, and seems that we've gotten away from the program lineup, which is fine. I'm not sure what's going to stick around and what's going to go. Probably nothing. Probably just will, the shows will be a little bit more random. We're going to do another Hey Do You Remember? Hey Do You Remember? Because I don't want to get away from, the 80s memory content. I don't want to get away from that. I don't want to do just strictly, wrestling stuff and lose the, the joy of reminiscing and childhood stuff. So we'll keep that. Hey, do you remember your mom and dad? Hey, do you remember your parents, folks? And I apologize in advance if this is a difficult hey, do you remember for some. It'll be a difficult one for me. It's not this sitcom family that I admired through television. But I've done a Hey, Do You Remember Your Grandparents? I've done that where I've, talked about, the joy of my grandparents, which was you're not going to stop, are you? Which was the sitcom, family, my grandparents. Different generation, maybe, different morals. Even than, parents in the 80s. Sure. I mean, I'm sitting here talking like the 80s were a time of purity and innocence, but probably not. Certainly not. And certainly not within my own family. So, Mother's Day's coming and, my mom sent me the annual text of, hey, are you going to come out and see me for Mother's Day? And I have to deal with that, guilt and whatever. The children's mother is not speaking to her family. Family's a mess in this house. But it got me thinking about, parents, my childhood memories of parents. And maybe surprisingly for some, I don't have a lot of memories of my mom and dad together. They got divorced in the Christmas of 85? Christmas of 85. Christmas of 85, they separated. I don't know when they actually got officially divorced, but my dad stopped living there somewhere around October, November of 85. And I didn't really pay any attention to it. I had no idea. Because my dad worked shift work at Kodak. It was called trick work. You worked A trick, B trick, C trick, and that was basically just, shifts. A shift, B shift. But you call it trick work because you would not have the same schedule every week, or you would not work just B shift. You would work A shift a couple of mornings and then B shift, and you work overnights like Friday, whatever. It was crazy. It was insane. I don't even know. So I think at some point my dad was just working C shift, which was overnights, for a little while, and I just didn't realize that he wasn't home, I guess, or whatever. I don't know. Is that a bug? Did you bring in a potato bug? Why did you bring in a potato bug? I don't want a potato bug here in the channel. There's no need for that. So I don't have a lot of memories of my parents together. I remember us, geez. Yeah. I remember moving into, the house that I still consider my childhood home, even though I probably only lived there 2 years. I remember us moving into that home. I remember my dad there. I remember them working on the house. I remember my dad and his cousin in the summertime going up on the roof and spraying my mom with a hose who was sunbathing. And, you know, me and my sisters were in the backyard and we could see my dad and his cousin up on the roof. He's running up the hose and he sprayed my mom, and that was funny. I remember that. I remember my dad getting me ready for school one morning. But I was very young. I was like 6 or 7. And he woke me up for school. He was getting me dressed. And then I told him I didn't have school that day because it was like parent-teacher conference or something. And he's like, oh. I know these are stupid, random, vague memories, but that's all I have of my parents actually together. I do remember the divorce, and I remember, you know, that's when a lot of memories kicked in. And I remember my dad lived with his mother. He moved back to the city, like to the very urban, not so nice, very not nice part of town. Because back when he grew up, it was fine, you know. Then come 80s, 90s, and obviously now it's, you know, it's like gang and drugs. But he lived there. He went back home with her because apparently he was broke, you know, with the child support and whatever he was giving my mother. I don't know. He moved in with his mother. And I remember us visiting him and me rejecting him and not wanting to spend time with him because I was mad or sad or whatever. And I think it finally came out like one Father's Day, like maybe Father's Day 86, maybe, which would have been, you know, the next upcoming Father's Day. I think I didn't give him a card, and we kind of had it out in the kitchen, I remember, and had it out as in like I cried and, you know, we hugged and it was all over. But yeah. So, but separately, I remember I have a lot of memories. I only, you know, my mom, it was me and my 2 sisters and my mom, and we only stayed in that house in Chili, New York. We only stayed in that childhood home for like another 4 months, maybe, until it was sold. And then we like, she had a boyfriend immediately, and they bought a house like right down the road from the childhood home, so I could still hang out with some of the kids on the street, but the writing was on the wall. I was leaving that neighborhood. And they only stayed together like 2 months, and they split up. And then we moved in with my grandparents for a little while. All of us, not just me. This is long before I lived there. And then we started getting into apartments. And I ended up going to a public school. So, you know, my mom, I guess mathematically, when they got divorced, my mom was only 28 or less, maybe 27. That's pretty young. And, you know, looking back now, it's extremely young. And so I think both of my parents, like, regressed a little bit after the divorce and started being 27-year-old kids again. And, you know, my mom was irresponsible and, you know, hardly worked and would rely on relationships. And, you know, I had a stepdad pretty quickly. You know, she got married again and had 2 more kids, and then that marriage failed. And, you know, so, you know, I think my mom probably tried pretty hard to raise us and, you know, but, you know, there was no typical childhood vacation memories that we've talked about. You know, I think we just got by. I don't know how she did it financially. I think my grandparents probably helped a lot. I don't remember her being ever on like social services. She might have been. She might have had food stamps at some point. I don't know. But we always lived in, you know, apartments, or, you know, when she got with other guys, like when she, you know, married my stepdad, I don't think they bought houses together. I think they rented houses. And we always lived in a new house every year, it seemed. We would have a new house, but they were always rented. And all I was concerned about was establishing my room. I'd see my dad on weekends, and, you know, he always lived in the city. So when he finally moved out of his mother's house, he rented a house that was split up into 3 different apartments. He lived in one, his sister lived in the other one, and then like a family friend lived in the third one. But you're not familiar with this area, but this was on a street called Rohr Street. And Rohr Street in 2024 is, I mean, it's one of the worst streets in Rochester. It's, you know, again, it's gangs, it's drugs, it's shootings, it's burned down houses, it's abandoned houses. It's just, like, you don't live there. You don't go there. And my dad and his sister and a family friend all had a house. This was probably like 1987. And we would go there. We would go hang out in this like old house that we didn't know any better, and it was cool and fun. And we'd hang, when my aunt was at work, we'd hang out in her apartment and whatever. And, you know, yeah. So my dad always lived in a city, and he always lived in, you know, rundown neighborhoods, you know, and he was still working at Kodak and all that. He was making a normal middle-class salary for the late 80s. But he always lived in just horrible neighborhoods. And, you know, he was very much more, he really became kind of active and wild. And it was hard to be around. He would take care of us and all that, but my dad, there were times when we would spend the night at my dad's house, me all of 12, my sister 10, my other sister, you know, 8 or 7, and 9, 10 o'clock at night, he'd go out. He'd hit the clubs. Seriously, my dad would hit the clubs. And he would come home at 2 o'clock in the morning, and we'd all be sleeping on the pull-out couch or whatever, and we were basically just home alone, you know, taking care of ourselves, because he was going out and he was going to do his thing. And I think my dad dated a lot, or, you know, hooked up a lot, whatever you want to call it, which is gross. He drank a lot. You know, he turned into like kind of a party guy. I mean, he carried, you know, he carried a gun. He had a gun in his truck. I mean, it was like, he was kind of nuts, my dad. And, so it wasn't always the best time going to hang out with him, because I was always like afraid of him. Because he was unpredictable, you know, and he was, you know, anyway. So it wasn't until about age, I never get it right, but maybe about age 14, 15, probably 15, I started living with my grandparents, because my mom and the person that she was married to, I didn't get along with. I wasn't treating him right, or treating him well. I wasn't treating my mother well. There was a couple of nights where my mom sent me to my dad's or sent me to my grandparents. And I think just one time my grandparents said, why don't you live here? I don't know how it got negotiated, but it did. And I stayed there until I was 21, moved out for 6 months, and then came back until I was 23. I think I probably missed out on parents in childhood. And my mother and father don't even know this whole YouTube thing exists. But if they accidentally come across it, don't take it personally. I missed out on... I certainly missed out on the gimmicky sitcom family. And it wasn't just the sitcom, because I had friends that had parents who were together and who had dinner together, and who, you know, had rules at the dinner table of properness and appropriateness. And I didn't get that until my grandparents, where we all sat down to dinner together, me and my grandparents, every night until I was 23. You know, I didn't have that with my parents, or at least I don't remember it. I'm obviously, they didn't divorce until I was 8. So from birth to 8, we probably ate dinner every night together. I just don't remember it. So I feel like I missed out on, you know, the family TV nights, you know, everybody gathered around the TV watching The Wizard of Oz. My mom and dad taking us out for ice cream. You know, I know those things happened. I just don't remember them at all. So I missed out on parents, you know, parents who were together. And I think that contributes a lot to why, you know, I'm here with my children in, you know, for years, maybe not the most healthy marriage, but, you know, my kids, I want them to have, you know, we do those things. We do eat dinner together when I'm home. We do go to ice cream together. We do the Universal Studios vacations. You know, we have big holidays together. And so, you know, my kids get to experience that. And my grandparents tried to fill in the void for that, and they did a fantastic job. You know, they did a perfect job. But I missed out on I think, on the parent experience. Like I said, this might make a few, you know, bring up some memories for some people. I'm sure that some of you watching have lost parents. Maybe you lost parents as adults. Maybe you lost parents as children. You know, and for that, I'm sorry, you know, if it's bringing up stuff for you. So tell your story if you'd like. You know, did you have the sitcom family? Did you have a church family? Did they pack you up on Sunday mornings and take you to church? Did they, you know, did they sit around and you know, watch primetime TV with you? Did they, you know, did they do those things? Did you swim in the pool in the summer with your dad throwing you off his shoulders? And, you know, again, I think that stuff probably happened up until I was 8, which sucks for me because that's when the memories kick in at 8, you know, so I don't have those memories. So whatever happened, no, not whatever happened to parents. Hey, do you remember your parents? Did I say it was a whatever happened to? Maybe that's subliminal, or not subliminal, Freudian. Maybe that's what I meant, whatever happened to parents. But hey, do you remember your parents? If you do, tell me about it below. We'll see you tomorrow. Good night now.